Well, certainly, Makhoali, I can tell you that the memorial was both emotional but also really deeply reflective as church leaders and community members gathered here at the Atteridgeville Community Hall to honor the lives lost in the Saulsville mass shooting. 12 lives lost in the most violent way. And really, community members, I can tell you, Makhoali, that shooting still weighing heavily on the community of Saulsville. But we heard from the speakers a very clear and unflinching message in regards to what transpired at that particular hostel, saying that this incident was not a surprise, it was not an accident, and at this point it is a clear sign of the festering epidemic of violence within South Africa's communities. But there was also a challenge to church leaders themselves, who spoke about the fact that they need to be far more entrenched in communities and really part of the suffering of communities. And this was a term, in fact, that was coined by my next guest, saying that churches need to avoid being ambulance churches, saying that they cannot simply show up in communities once the damage is done, once the injuries and the murder of a 3-year-old child has been committed, once the tragic murder of 12 people and their lives have been claimed. I'm going to speak now to Bishop Sidwell. Of course, this is the chairperson of the South African Council of Churches in Gauteng. Bishop, thank you so much for your time. It was particularly your message that I think stood out from the rest when it came to the challenge that communities and churches have. But a reflection of this violence, as you said, it shows something far deeper within South Africa as a nation.
Yes, indeed. We are a nation that, tragic as this incident is, it needs to take the best out of us. It is said that we have to organize ourselves in the after effects, what I called ambulance ministry or undertaker ministry. We are called to be a people that the message we have been given throughout the week, which is a message, by the way, that flows from the South African Council of Churches' own broad vision about looking about the South, what we call the South Africa we pray for. We draw this partly from the vision of the liberation struggle that we waged, of a free, non-racial, non-sexy, democratic, a united, prosperous, egalitarian society. And so part of our responsibility is to mobilize ourselves to say, this is a lesson, as I said in there, that we need to be a church that is incarnated, that is rooted in the communities. We need to smell like the communities that we shepherd. A good shepherd is the one who smells like sheep, if you are really taking care of your communities. And that is what we are pushing beyond what has happened. We have done acts of intervention, of caring. We sent a team to the hospital to minister to those who are injured. We organize with our partners, Makhoali, as you heard, to providing food to the family. Our churches came to the fore to organize resources to transport families to the homes. And today we had a memorial service to say we're standing alongside God's people who are injured at this time.
And surely the Saulsville massacre, as we said, it's not something new to South Africans. There was that message as well that also raised the alarm to say, perhaps as a society, we're now becoming numb to the suffering of people. We're becoming numb to heinous acts such as murder. What does this tell us, specifically in regards to the reaction once we saw this murder, and particularly to the fact that, I mean, amongst the victims was a child as young as 3 years old?
Yes, the hostel is legacy of the apartheid system. That, as we said, that these people are here because they've gone to what they perceive to be greener pastures. But historically, we know the labor regiment of our country is that cheap labor was taken from rural areas to be brought to the cities where there are mines, where there is industry, and look at how they are housed. We appreciate the fact that government took a decision to transform these hostels into family units. That is why we find that in that place where there was death, in as much as it is an illegal shaping, but it's also a homestead. So these children were not brought there to drink. That is their home, they are staying there. And so those who came to mow them down did not even have a conscience to say these are children that need to be spared. Any life that is lost is regretted, but if it is that of women and children, this shows how numb we have become, the legacy of the violence that we come from historically. We still need to heal our trauma. We still need to heal our memories. We need to find that we are better than what we are experiencing. Isolated as this may be, but they are becoming frequent. The General Secretary gave us a list of where these shootings have happened.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bishop Dr. Sidwell. I'm going to bring in Makhoali, if you'll allow me, one of the residents of Saulsville Hostel. He's been residing at the particular hostel for 32 years. And Dr., thank you for your time. You heard the reflection from church leaders, but living within that trauma yourself, talk to me, I think, perhaps about the kind of aftermath that this has had for the Saulsville Hostel, particularly given the fact that you were speaking to police earlier this week where you told them yourself that this is not the first time we've seen such brutality.
Thanks, man. The situation at the hostel, we received it with heavy hearts, and as you say, it's not for the first time that such things had been happening, but this one it's very worse, where a number of people were shot at the time where we expected everybody to be sleeping, and those who invaded the hostel without speaking to anybody, they just started shooting from the outside. Because if you look into the whole incident, there are people who were shot outside the place that is referred to as Shebeen. One of the guys who was shot outside got out of the very same place that is called the Shebeen to go and buy beers somewhere not far. He was shot when returning from buying those beers. The other one was just shot in the passage that's just next to the Shebeen itself. That means what happened, it was something where people have just decided at their own space that they are today going to attack that particular hostel space, though it is being referred to Shebeen, which to me, up to now, I don't accept that it was a Shebeen. Because what we are seeing of these people who are selling from the hostel, there are people who will go out only to buy 1 or 2 cases of beers to come and spend the night. Even before it becomes the middle of the night, those cases, or 2 or 3, they will be finished. So this says, by the time of the shooting, in the Shebeen, there was no beer at all, where people will have to go outside to go and look where they can find something, and they were shot. Anyone who was to appear from the neighboring doors was to be shot also. So those people that came there, they were just randomly shooting people without even giving the reason of the shot or demanded anything from those who were inside. They just started shooting those who were inside.
And we know now, of course, as families mourn, as funeral preparations get underway of those 12 victims, the question still remains, and I'm sure this is the same for those living within the hostel, what was the motive, what was the reason behind this gruesome act? Well,
up to now, there's nobody who can tell what was the motive and who took this messy actions, people who shot. So nobody can even tell the size of those people that appeared. They only had gunshots and the people disappeared. So there's nobody who is sure, including the police themselves. They are not even sure as to who did this gruesome act.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Ndati. We appreciate it. And of course, Makhoali, as questions remain, the reality is a community right now still not only left in limbo, but absolutely grieving a trauma that has clearly also left community members. But again, even churches asking themselves, when will this violence, an epidemic within South Africa, end? Especially now as we head towards the festive season, it does definitely create that sense of fear, not just for the Saulsville community, Atteridgeville, Tshwane at large, but the country as a whole, to say really when does the violence end and who in any space, in any community is safe within South Africa. Back to you.